Welcome to Realm Talk, Lands of Faerun. Today, we're diving deep into, well, a place that's really something else. The peninsula of Chult.
Definitely. It's formidable.
You've pulled together quite the collection for us. Ancient scrolls, traveler's logs, reports. Feels like piecing together a complex puzzle.
It really is. Chult has this reputation, a lost continent, maybe a heart of darkness. It's just fundamentally different from a lot of Faerun.
How so?
Well, think subtropical jungles, relentless heat, diseases, fauna that sees you as lunch, plus a history of, let's say, cultural isolation and some pretty dramatic collapses.
Okay, so our goal here is to really get under the skin of it, figure out what makes Chult.
Exactly. We'll trace its history, look at the land itself, the creatures, the people, their beliefs, the powers at play.
Yeah.
Try to build a complete picture from these fragments.
Right, let's start with that history then. It sounds like it goes way, way back. What's the first layer we know about?
Incredibly far back.
Yeah.
The earliest known civilization mentioned in these texts are the Saruk. They founded an empire called Mezro.
Saruk. Reptilian, right. The serpent creators.
That's them. Came from a place called Okoth, apparently. Masters of the arcane arts, especially flesh warping. Pretty nasty stuff. Their empire covered the whole peninsula.
And they created other races.
Yes, the Yuan-Ti are the most famous example. They apparently shaped existing reptilian creatures into these servitors.
But like you said, collapses are a theme. What happened to them?
Well, two things, it seems. First, a mysterious sickness, a kind of wasting malady, hit the Saruk themselves. Drove many into slumber, others fled. This left the Yuan-Ti to inherit the pieces around some 24,800 Dale reckoning.
Okay.
And then the final blow seems to have been massive dragon assaults, just devastated what was left of Herrshock around that same time.
Dragons and a plague. Brutal end. So just Yuan-Ti left then?
Not quite. Around 24,000 DR, maybe a bit later, the Kuatls arrived.
Ah, the winged serpents, beings of light.
Exactly. Though, interestingly, some sources suggest they might also have been transformed Suruk, just from a different faction, enemies of the Herrshock. Their purpose was clear, though. Eradicate the lingering evil. They became guardians.
And did they fare any better?
They lasted a long time, but ultimately, no. They also succumbed. The texts mention a nightmare-fueled slumber. Maybe their own magic, maybe the land itself. It's unclear.
Wow, there's that pattern again. Powerful beings rise, try to tame Chult, and then fall to something strange.
It's a recurring motif, definitely. This land seems to resist being dominated long-term.
Fascinating. Okay, so when do humans finally step onto this rather dangerous stage?
Much later. We're talking around -2809 DR for significant human presence. Tribes like the Isho, the Tabaxi, and these were human tribes, important distinction, and the thing has started migrating south.
Where did they end up?
Their journey led them towards the peaks of flame, those massive volcanoes. And it's there they encountered Ubtao.
Right. Ubtao, the creator of Chult. This is the big moment for human civilization there.
Absolutely. This is where it really kicks off. Under Ubtao's guidance, they founded Mezro in Nagasha 2637 DR. It wasn't just a city, it was the holy city, the spiritual center.
And he gave it protectors.
Yes, the Beret. Individuals infused with his power, essentially immortal paladins guarding the city. Mezro itself was often magically hidden too, emphasizing how sacred it was.
I think here's where it gets really interesting, because even divine protection, it doesn't seem absolute in Chult. What were the big shocks to Mezro's system?
The challenge came from within. One of the Beret, a figure named Kaios.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. He delved into forbidden necromantic lore, split off, founded his own city, Kuluth Mar, and then tried to achieve godhood. Sources differ on dates, maybe around 653 DR, maybe later attempts around 483 DR.
How did that end?
Badly for him. An alliance, including another Bura named Nensi, remember that name, Ras Nensi, stopped him. Nensi actually used Kaios' own magic against him, trapping him in a monolith.
But using that kind of magic, that must have had consequences.
Profound ones. Nisi's own powers were twisted. And the Yesho tribe, who'd apparently dabbled in Kios' teachings, became estranged from the Tabaxi.
Ah, so that's what led to the war between them.
Exactly. The Yesho-Tabaxi War, or the time of conflict, it raged for centuries, from around Megaj 483 DR down to Negaja 122 DR. Devastating stuff.
And Nasi got involved again?
Deeply. The Esho attacked Mezro itself. They were pushed back, but Nisi, he became zealous. He hunted the retreating Esho relentlessly, slaughtered them, even raised them as undead to serve him.
Raised them as undead, and attacked Mezro with them.
He besieged Mezro with his undead forces, yes. For that, he was finally exiled to Negatus 122 DR. This whole period nearly wiped out the Esho, weakened Mezro's influence, and sort of created space for groups like the Batiri goblins to thrive in the chaos.
Meanwhile, another city was rising and falling. Omu.
That's right, Omu, further inland, built on incredible mineral wealth, became known as the Jewel of Chult.
Sounds proper.
It was. But they grew greedy, arrogant, started enslaving other Chultans. And Ubtao, well, he withdrew his favor, maybe around the 12th or 13th century DR, roughly 200 years before the present.
And without Ubtao's blessing.
Omu just collapsed. Sickness, infighting, rebellions, it fell into ruin, became cursed. The Forbidden City, a real cautionary tale about hubris.
Okay, fast forward a bit. The spell plague, that hit everywhere hard, didn't it? What did it do to Chult?
Massively disruptive. Started in 1385 DR. Physically, it temporarily turned Chult into an island.
Yeah.
And critically, during that chaos, Mezro vanished.
Vanished. Just like that.
To most people, yes. It fueled the belief that Ubtao had truly abandoned them. Some tribes outside the cities apparently descended into, well, what outsiders called barbarism.
But there's more to Mezro's story, isn't there? It wasn't just abandonment.
Much more, according to later findings. The surviving Bure didn't let it get destroyed. They used immense magic to shift Mezro into a pocket dimension for safety.
And Ross Nikit, he was involved?
He was. And this is the tragic twist. He helped with the ritual, but apparently inserted a condition for its return. Mezro would only reappear when all dangers to her are gone.
That sounds impossible.
Exactly. It became his twisted justification. To keep Mezro safe in exile, he strives to keep Chult perpetually dangerous. So the spell plague didn't just cause chaos, it locked Mezro away and sealed Nissi's fate.
Which brings us almost to the present day and the biggest crisis now. The death curse.
The death curse, yes, affecting all of Toril. No resurrections work, and anyone previously raised is wasting away. And the source, traced right back here to Chult. Specifically to Omu, an artifact called the Soulmonger, hidden beneath the ruins.
So Chult is suddenly very popular again for all the wrong reasons.
Precisely. Lots of new expeditions, lots of powerful groups, suddenly very interested in the Forbidden City.
But you also mentioned change. Like in Port Nyanzaru, things aren't totally static.
No, definitely not. Port Nyanzaru seems to be shifting, moving from that older, perhaps more insular tribal focus towards a very cosmopolitan, business-first culture, trading with the world.
Shaped by that Amnian colonial period too, presumably.
Absolutely. Am's rule left its mark. You see Joaquin worship, the merchant-driven economy.
Yeah.
Port Nyanzaru fought for independence, got it relatively recently, but the structures remain influential.
Yeah.
Looking back, it's just cycle after cycle. Saruk, Kuatals, Mezro, Omu. They rise, they fall. The land itself feels like this crucible. The past isn't buried here. It's walking around, sometimes literally.
Okay, let's shift from the timeline to the place itself.
Yeah.
Chult's geography. It sounds like it actively fights back.
It really does. It resists settlement on any grand scale. You've got the peninsula, sometimes an island thanks to the spell plague, south of the Trical Sea, mountains, especially in the east, often volcanic, dense jungle covering most of the west, and then vast, swampy areas.
Travel must be a nightmare. Rivers the main way.
Rivers like the Ocean Star are crucial, yeah.
Yeah.
But even they are dangerous. It's just a hard place to get around.
And the jungles themselves, legendary for being deadly.
Among the most dangerous environments on Toril, based on these accounts, it's not just the beasts. The plants are hostile. Strangling vines, poisonous thorns, flesh-eating flora.
Seriously, flesh-eating plants.
Mentioned quite vividly. And the trees are colossal, hosting equally colossal creatures. Reptiles dominate. It's an active, aggressive ecosystem, not just wilderness, but hostile territory. Plus you have savannas, swamps. It all adds up.
Any specific landmarks that really stand out for danger or lore?
The Peaks of Flame, definitely. Volcanic, yes, home to fire creatures. But the deep lore. That's where Ubtao supposedly keeps Dendar the Night Serpent imprisoned.
Dendar, the world-ending primordial serpent, locked under a volcano.
That's the story. Sealed behind iron doors. It makes the peaks a place of, well, cosmic significance, a ticking time bomb, maybe.
Intense. What about the Valley of Lost Honor? That sounds ominous.
It is. Deep jungle, site of the Esho's last stand against Ross and the Macy, so steeped in sorrow. Rumors of hidden Esho gold persist.
But also darker things.
Oh, yes. Talk of Eshido, this sinister entity linked maybe to Shar, plotting revenge. And tales of undead hordes just wiping out anyone who lingers too long. Lava flows of buried bones there. It's a grim, cursed place.
Even the coastline isn't safe for travelers.
Wild coast, particularly the west, is notoriously treacherous. Cliffs, whirlpools, sudden gales, sea monsters. Even the skies aren't safe accounts of aerial battles between dinosaurs and giant eagles. Some brave souls try exploring coastal caves for rumored mines, but it's risky.
And the climate. Just brutal heat and disease.
Relentless, subtropical, rarely drops below 80 Fahrenheit. Heavy rainy seasons that breed disease, then brutally hot dry seasons causing dehydration and exhaustion. Untreated water is a death sentence. Insects, plants, even the mists carry sickness. It all comes back to the environment being inherently lethal. Anything in the jungle can kill you isn't much of an exaggeration here. It forces societies to be small, mobile, or incredibly fortified. The ruins tell the story of civilizations that couldn't sustain themselves against that pressure long term. Places like the peaks or the valley aren't just locations. They're tied to deep lore, powerful energies, active threats.
Given that environment, the life that does thrive must be extraordinary and dangerous.
Breathtakingly diverse, and yes, often incredibly lethal.
Let's talk about the big ones, the dinosaurs, the children of Ubtao.
Right. Chult is dinocentral. You've got huge herbivores like ankylosauruses. Triceratops is used for transport and labor in Port Nyanzaru, believe it or not.
They tame them.
They do. Then you have the predators. The Tyrannosaurus rex, the apex. Ubtao himself is sometimes depicted as one. Velociraptors used in those horrible executioner's run games. Brontosaurus, Stegosaurus. The list goes on.
And undead ones, too?
Yes, zombie dinosaurs, zombie T-Rexes. Try sleeping soundly knowing that's out there.
How do they tame the living ones? Magic.
See, just be a mix, some arcane knowledge, some innate connection. The texts mention a strange, unexplainable affinity. They use them as guards, pack animals, mounts. The dinosaur races in the port are huge entertainment. It's a unique adaptation, really.
Okay, beyond dinosaurs, what other unique creatures should we know about? Any highlights from this Chultan bestiary?
Oh, there are so many bizarre ones. Aldani lobster folk, Almirage horned rabbits, Tringish-eyed little elementals, Ablalis, these tall, intelligent crane folk, fire newts near the volcanoes, flail snails, giant snails with mace-like tentacles.
Little snails.
Frogomoths, enormous amphibious predators. Jarellans, four-armed white apes. Grung, the poison frog people. Jaculi, flying snakes. Comodons, leopards covered in snakes. Terrafolk, winged reptilian raiders. Su-monsters, psionic monkeys. Zorbos, koala-like things that absorb magic. And that's just scratching the surface. Chuls, hydras, nagas, troglodytes, wyverns. It's wild.
A real menagerie of nightmares. What about the sentient folk living out in the jungle, not in the port?
Primarily human tribes, living in small nomadic villages, maybe 10, 15 families. They practice shifting agriculture, use tools of stone, wood, bone, maybe some copper. Metal is scarce.
And magic.
Usually restricted. Maybe one practitioner per village focused on practical things like hunting aids or potions. Anyone delving deeper often becomes an outcast, a renegade mage.
Are there dwarves out there too?
Yes, wild dwarves, the Durothalar, descendants of gold dwarves who adapted to the jungle, and some albino shield dwarves in the mountains, survivors of an older kingdom. Both groups tend to worship Thard-Har, the dwarven god of jungle survival, noted as an ally of Ubtao.
Even the goblins are different here. Batiri.
Very different. The Batiri are jungle goblins cunning, masters in ambush. Famous for the Batiri battle stack, fighting on each other's shoulders. Ingenious traps and defenses around their villages. Interestingly, they value painted masks and totems more than gold. Some tribes, like the biting ant tribe, really hate the grung.
Okay, tell us more about the grung, poisonous frog people.
That's them. Brightly colored amphibious humanoids. Their skin secretes poison they use on weapons. Very territorial, even between grung clans. They have a rigid caste system based on color, from green workers up to a gold sovereign. They also enslave other creatures and need to stay near water. Fierce fighters.
And we can't forget the plants are out to get you too.
Absolutely crucial point. Every bush and vine is a potential threat. Spines delivering toxins or disease. Specific nightmares conclude the assassin vine. It moves, it constricts. The mantrap lures prey in. The triflower frond, 3 types of deadly bloom on one plant.
And Uluth the Long, that's not just a plant, is it?
No, that's something else. An intelligent, malevolent entity that possesses plants. Turns vines into weapons, mimics voices to lure victims. It elevates the jungle from hazardous to actively malicious. It really underscores how deeply intertwined life, danger, and the divine are here. Dinosaurs are Ubtao's children. The trickster gods are embodied by specific animals. Survival means respecting, or at least understanding, these lethal connections. The jungle itself acts as a filter, explaining why building lasting empires here is so incredibly hard.
So, given all that, how do people manage to build anything lasting? Where are the main centers of civilization?
The big one, the gateway, is Port Nyanzaru. It's vibrant, chaotic, dangerous in its own way, but it's the main hub.
It shook off Amnian rule, right, with help.
Yes, gained independence relatively recently, aided by this secret group, the Utepka Society, the Triceratops Society. The city itself is built on hills, very defensible, with walls inside walls and covered in colorful decorations, murals of animals, myths. It's visually striking.
What are the key parts of the city?
You've got the old city, ancient structures mixed with newer huts, sort of run by beggar princes from repurposed ziggurats. That's also where the executioner's run happens. The merchants' ward is the rich area, fancy villas, the grand souk market. The harbor ward is huge, handling all the trade, heavily defended by Port Nyanzaru. The market ward is the everyday heart, shops, inns like the Thundering Lizard.
And outside the walls.
Muller's Throat is a precarious slum built over a ravine. Tariki Anchorage is where you find explorers gearing up, dinosaur handlers in their pens, maybe some shadier dealings.
And the rulers, the merchant princes.
7 of them, power based purely on wealth. They rule jointly from the Golden Throne Palace. Each controls a monopoly on a specific trade.
Didn't you name a few? Give us a flavor.
Sure. Ikina Afa handles weapons and gear. He's a former gladiator. Ifan Talro controls beasts, dinosaurs, the racing scene. Jessamine deals in plants, poisons, the shadier side of botany. Jobel licenses all the guides and sells maps. Quayothe is the youngest, controls luxury goods like fruit and wine. Wakanga Otamo is the main magic dealer and lore keeper. And Zanthi handles gems, jewelry, textiles.
So the whole economy is geared towards exporting Chult's unique exotic resources.
Absolutely. Spices, perfumes, rare timber, ivory, dinosaur parts, medicinal herbs. The markets are buzzing. And the entertainment, the dinosaur races, gladiator fights, it all ties back to the city's wealth and Chult's dangerous nature.
We talked about Mezro's history. Its current status is lost, hidden.
It's a tragic mystery, really.
Yeah.
The lost holy city, founded by Uptao, protected by the Bare, disappeared during the spell plague. We know now it was moved to a pocket dimension.
Aye, the beret, with Rosnissi's twisted condition attached.
Exactly. Trapped in exile by his words. One Bara, Mainu, is apparently still wandering Faerun, but the city itself has gone from this plane. It's a central enigma, tied up with Nisi and Uptao's silence.
And Omu. Still a forbidden ruin?
Very much so. Once the jewel fell to greed, lost Uptao's favor, became the cursed, forbidden city. In that vacuum, the 9 trickster gods rose those spirits tied to animals, maybe aspects of Uptao. The Onwins built shrines to them, underwent trials. Now its ruins are ground zero for the death curse, hiding the tomb of the 9 gods and the soulmonger artifact.
And beyond these cities, we still have those scattered groups.
Right. The human tribes, small villages, non-metal tech. The Batiri goblins, cunning ambushes with their battle stacks. The Grung, poisonous territorial frog folk with their caste system and need for water.
Any other significant settlements or presences?
Fort Beluarian is important. It's an outpost of the Flaming Fist mercenaries from Baldur's Gate. Officially, they're pacifying the region, but really they control exploration rights through selling charters, taking a cut of any treasure found. Plus the wild dwarves out in the deep jungle and mountains.
The whole feel of Chult. It blends different real-world inspirations, doesn't it?
It does. The aesthetic often evokes African safari mixed with Amazonian rainforest, pulling from Mayan or Aztec visuals for ruins. Think King Solomon's Mayans meets Jurassic Park, maybe? Port Nyanzaru reflects this blend to indigenous Chultan culture, hints of Mastica, and the layer of Amnian colonial influence.
That colonial past
Yeah.
still echoes.
Definitely. Joaquin worship, the merchant prince structure itself. These are adaptations of foreign systems. Port Nyanzaru is independent. But is it truly self-sufficient or now economically dependent on northern markets? Some sources even raise critiques about how these cultures are depicted, sometimes relying on older stereotypes, which is worth being aware of. And that idea of lost civilization is very active. Mezro is hidden. Omu is dangerous. Rosnisi is a current threat. The past, Saruk, Quattles. Their legacies linger. Exploring ruins here isn't archaeology. It's often actively dangerous.
Let's shift to the divine, then. Who are the gods and spirits shaping belief in Chult? Starting with the big one, Uptao.
Uptao is central, unique. Not really a god in the conventional Faerûnian sense, often called a true neutral primordial. An ancient fundamental power.
His titles reflect that complexity. Creator, founder, father of dinosaurs, but also the deceiver.
Exactly. His main cosmic job seems to be keeping Dendar the Night Serpent locked away beneath the peaks of flame. That might explain some of the deception, maybe?
How is he usually depicted?
Rarely as a humanoid, sometimes an ageless, dark-skinned man. More often symbolically as a maze, or literally as a massive Tyrannosaurus rex, directly linking him to the dinosaurs.
But he was more directly involved historically, guiding tribes, founding Mezro.
Yes. much more hands-on in the early days. But then he withdrew, stepped back, maybe fractured into nature spirits. This withdrawal coincides with Omu's fall, Mezro's disappearance. It led to that feeling of abandonment. His religion was about self-discovery, trials, the maze. His silence created a huge spiritual gap.
Any other really ancient figures connected to him?
There's mention of Ekatzin, a mythical Kuatl, one of those winged serpents favored by Uktau, supposedly guided the first humans to Chult. Kuals remain sacred symbols for many.
And into that gap Uktau left stepped the trickster gods.
In Omu, yes, after his fall. These 9 powerful spirits emerged. Many see them as fragments of Uktau himself, scattered aspects, each tied to a specific Chultan animal, Grum, some monster, Jackali, and so on. They're central to the whole Tomb of Annihilation story and the Death Curse.
Can you give us a quick sense of what they represent?
They cover spectrum. Moa, the Jakuli, is about stealth and unity. Shagambi, the Kamade, is combat prowess. Kubazan, the Frogoth, is raw strength. Ovalaka, the Zorbo, represents caution. Unk, the flail snail, is endurance. Ijin, the Almirage, is flexibility. Papazadal, the Eblis, is vigilance. Nanyan, the Grung, embodies cruelty. And Wango, the Sioux monster, represents aggression and lethality. It's a fragmented, pragmatic spirituality reflecting the jungle's harsh lessons.
But Port Nyanzaru, being a trade hub, brought in other gods.
Yes, deities from the wider Forgotten Realms pantheon arrived, mostly due to Amnian influence and ongoing trade. Joaquin, the goddess of trade, is huge, especially with the merchant princes. Her temple is the city's bank.
Gone, too.
God of craft, yeah. Lantinese influence there. His temple has a big fountain. Lothander, god of dawn, has a shrine.
And Severus, god of divination, his temple is old.
Very old and grand, apparently. Worshipped there long before the Amnians arrived. It suggests the religious landscape was always more complex than just Uktau.
Any others with a notable presence?
Sun, goddess of beauty, has a unique temple out on a sea rock. Malar, god of the hunt. Tiamora, goddess of luck, they have worshippers. And of course Thardhar for the dwarves, the god of jungle survival, noted as an ally of Uktau.
And the ultimate dark power lurking beneath. Dendar.
Dendar, the night serpent, apocalyptic primordial entity, supposedly a 300-foot serpent. Imprisoned by Uktau under the peaks of flame, prophecy says she'll break free and try to eat the sun. Some Yuan-Ti cults actively work towards her release. She's Uktau's main burden.
Beyond these major figures, any other beliefs? Animism, ancestors.
Older sources mention animism and ancestor veneration were part of the original Chultan beliefs and likely persist in more isolated tribes. There's also influence from the Mastican pantheon, sometimes folded into the local calendar or seen as aspects of Uktau. So you have this theological crisis after Uktau's withdrawal. The trickster gods fill some of that void. Foreign deities move in. Older beliefs likely endure. Chultan religion is dynamic, resilient, pragmatic. And Uktau himself remains this complex figure creator, guardian, deceiver. His silence potentially a necessary part of his cosmic duty against Dendar rather than simple abandonment.
Which leads us to politics. Who actually holds power or tries to in this chaotic place?
Okay, internally, Port Nyanzaru is the center. It's an oligarchy run by those 7 merchant princes. Wealth is the only qualification. They emerged after kicking out Am, ruled jointly from Golden Throne, each controlling their trade monopoly.
And outside the port, tribal leadership.
It's much more diffuse. Human tribes probably have clan elders, chieftains. The Grung have that strict hierarchy up to their gold sovereign. Batiri goblins follow powerful chieftains or war bosses like Grabstab.
Is there any organized local resistance to outside influence? You mentioned the Atepka Society?
Yes, the Triceratops Society.
Mm.
They operate secretly in Port Nyanzaru, working to protect Chultan interests. They were key in ousting Am. It shows a definite undercurrent of wanting to maintain autonomy.
But Chult definitely attracts outsiders. What are the big factions operating there now?
The Flaming Fist is a major one. Mercenaries from Baldur's Gate, based at Fort Beluarian. Their commander is Liara Porter. Officially, they're pacifying the East, but they profit by controlling explorations, selling those charters, and taking a big cut. There are even whispers of them colluding with pirates. They're a serious military and economic force.
And the Zentarum are always sniffing around opportunities, right?
Always. The Black Network. In Port Nyanzaru, they're actually quite popular as hired guards for the wealthy. Merchant Prince Jobel supposedly oversees mercenaries, but the Zents operate independently, pursuing their own goals, wealth, power, artifacts, both inside the city and out in the jungle. They've infiltrated pretty deeply.
And the Red Wizards of Thay showing up? That can't be good.
No, the sources call it a dire portent. They're infamous necromancers from Thay. Their increased activity, especially around the Aldani Basin, signals trouble. They're hunting powerful magic, artifacts, influence, and they don't care who gets hurt. Major magical threat.
Are there any groups pushing back against these less savory factions?
There are. The Harpers are likely active, working subtly against the Zhentarim, trying to protect people from exploitation.
Okay.
And the Order of the Gauntlet is present too, dedicated to justice. They've set up camps like Camp Righteous and 1 Year Omu under Ord Firebeard, specifically to fight the undead and investigate the death curse.
Though they sometimes clash with locals.
Yeah, they've had run-ins with groups like the Grung, apparently due to misunderstandings. They mean well, fighting a real evil, but might lack nuance in dealing with Chult's complex web of cultures.
How do all these groups interact? It sounds like a powder keg.
It's incredibly tense. You have local rivalries, Grung versus Batiri, Grung versus Yuan-Ti, because the Yuan-Ti eat their eggs.
Yuan-Ti eat Grung eggs.
Apparently. And the Yuan-Ti themselves, often worshipping Dendor, are hostile to almost everyone. Add in the external factions pursuing their own agendas. It's complex. The Flaming Fist controlling territory. The Zhentarim acting as private security and running their own ops. The Red Wizards plotting. That colonial past casts a long shadow. Am ruled directly. Now, Port Nyanzaru was independent, but heavily influenced by Amnian structures and reliant on northern trade. Is it truly independent or just economically dependent? The Flaming Fist presence feels like continued exploitation under a different name. Chult's legendary riches make it a target. It's a geopolitical game board with factions vying for control, often framing it as pacification when it's really about resources. Port Nyanzaru's independence might be somewhat superficial. They rely on foreign mercenaries like the Zhentarim for security. Their economy hinges on exports. The Zhentarim operate with considerable freedom. The Flaming Fist controls huge swaths of land outside the city. It feels like a shift from direct rule to maybe a neo-colonial dependency. Groups like the Atepka Society are crucial for pushing back against that, defending actual Chultan interests. The Merchant Prince's power really lies in navigating these messy external pressures and internal dynamics.
So wrapping this up, Chult sounds like a land defined by intense contrasts.
Absolutely. Astonishing beauty right next to brutal lethality. Ancient wisdom alongside what some call primitivism. Incredible potential wealth overshadowed by the constant struggle for survival.
A history of empires rising, falling, divine meddling, disasters, but also resilience.
Exactly. The geography isn't just backdrop, it's an active character. The ecosystem is unique, terrifying. Civilization exists in pockets, surrounded by ruins that are still dangerous. The spiritual landscape is fractured. Ubtao's silence, the trickster gods, foreign faiths, Dendor looming, and the politics are fragmented, with local powers squeezed by powerful external factions.
It really does feel unique within the realms.
It stands apart. It's less typical high fantasy, more lost world exploration, survival horror, ancient mysteries. A crucible where nature, magic, and the gods clash constantly. And with the death curse centered there, Mezro's still lost. It's a land of active, ongoing adventure, not just dusty history. The past is dangerously alive.
And fascinating how its story touches on themes we see in the real world: colonialism, resource exploitation.
Yes, that layer adds depth. It's not just about dinosaurs and jungles. It's a microcosm exploring grand cycles, the power of nature, the fight for autonomy against external pressures. So here's something to chew on. Based purely on these accounts, we see this pattern again and again. Powerful entities, Saruk Kawas, fall to mysterious afflictions. Grand civilizations, Mer Shulk, Omu, even Mezro in its exile, ultimately can't endure against the land's resistance. Is it possible? Is it possible the land of Chult itself possesses some inherent, maybe even divine resistance, a force ensuring that large-scale, permanent civilization can't take root, that the wilderness and its ancient, dangerous secrets always eventually reclaim dominance?